Good evening properly to everybody and welcome. I'm Carly Brookfield. I'm Chief Executive of Driving Instructors Association, but tonight I am acting in my capacity as Chair of the National Association Strategic Partnership. If you don't know who NASP are, we are the only recognised industry steering group for the driver and rider training industry, and part of our role is to work collaboratively together as the three main associations, but also act as the first tier consultative stakeholder party to DVSA. So really the main group that DVSA consults with most regularly on all matters related to ADIs, driver testing, driver licensing in our realm, as it were. Obviously other consultation goes on with other groups in different forms of licensing, etc. But this is the group that has the most interface with the regulator on matters that really impact your world. So given the fact that it's not been very noisy out there, it's been very quiet for you all, we thought this would be a good opportunity to come and chat to you tonight, hear your questions and concerns and discuss those with you. I'm joined by the heads of the other associations who I'm going to let introduce themselves, actually, because they do it better than I can. So Lynn, I'll throw it over to you first to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Carly. So I'm Lynn Barry, and currently I'm president at the ADI-NJC. I was formerly the chair.
Have you had a promotion, Lynn?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
And good evening, I'm Mike Yeomans, and I'm the National Chairman for the Motor Schools Association. And I'm here in particular to listen to a lot of your questions and see where we go from there.
Thanks, folks. So what we're going to do is we're mainly, if you guys don't mind, take your Q&As, your questions in the Q&A button. As you can see that, it should either be in the top toolbar on your screen in Zoom, or your bottom toolbar should be a little button called Q&A. If you can post your questions in there whilst we chat, we're going to pick them up. We've already had some sent in by email, and we'll deal with those first, as well as some industry updates. But as we chat, throw in your questions. I'll be monitoring those and I'll field them out to either myself, Mike, or Lynn. You can also share your views with us on there. Feel free also to use the chat. I won't be keeping as close an eye on that at the moment, but you can chat amongst yourselves on that or just express views. We will go back to that from time to time as well to make sure that we're not missing that. So just to recap, questions in the Q&A, chat amongst yourselves in the chat if you want to as well. So first off the bat, I've got a little update from DVSA that we asked them to give us in lieu of them, being busy on the front line testing at the moment. Was there anything that they wanted to update this group with? So we asked them for an update on driving test waiting times, because clearly that is one of the most important issues that we're all concerned about at the moment. And DVSA didn't give us a lot of detail, it has to be said. I think my colleagues would agree with that. But with their return to the front line, they appear to feel that they are making some progress, but we need to push them a little bit more on what that progress is. So the bullet points, and I am going to boringly read them out to you here, are that since April 21, measures put in place by the DVSA to reduce waiting times for customers, together with the ongoing recruitment of driving examiners, is creating an average of over 42,900 extra car tests each month. So they believe the things that they're doing are creating these 42,000 or so extra slots each month, which is hopefully helping with that total coming down. They've deployed, as we all know, from October onwards, all eligible managers and admin staff who are able to back to the front line, which was a figure of over 230 personnel. And they've been deployed from the beginning of October at the moment through to the end of the March. So around a 6-month time period that they want to really focus what resources they have. They believe that this is going to create an extra 150,000 test slots. However, car practical test volumes are continuing to be high due to an increase in demand, sustained industrial action on civil service pay, and people's concerns about not being able to book a test. Now, that point there is something that they've discussed in depth with other associations. DVSA are concerned that post-COVID, there has been a change in customer behaviour, that people are so worried they're not going to get a test. They're starting to book a test when before they've even started driving lessons. They're booking them much earlier in the cycle, and that's causing an impact on the system, and it's a complete change in customer behavior according to DVSA. So they're often asking us, have we got any ideas? Has the industry got any ideas about how we can change that customer behavior back to what it was previously? As of the 13th of November, so a little bit of an update from last week's figures, there were 562,296 car practical driving tests booked, with 82,836 driving tests available within the 24-week booking window. So that's a little update we've had from DVSA. I'm just going to kick it over very briefly whilst I have a quick look at the Q&A to my colleagues here. What do you think about those final two stats, Lynn and Mike, that I've just given you there? Are we a little bit cynical maybe about that 82,000 available tests in a 24-week window? What's your views, you two?
Wondering how they work those out, and which, I mean, obviously that's all test centres, so you've also got the ones where there won't be the huge waiting list, but we know members who've got waiting times of much longer than that. Some people are saying they can't get tests at all. I know in my area you'd be waiting until April, May time to get a test. So I am a bit sceptical about how those are actually worked out, and we've had members say that to us.
Yeah, we've had a similar issue. We've found that, particularly again in my area, which is in the sort of Hull area, so it's quite out by the coast, we tend to have a fairly short waiting list. So we're not suffering from it as much. However, my neighbours just the other side, about 20 miles away, they're having a real problem. It's May at the earliest before they're going to get something.
I think also worrying, Carly, is the wasted slots. I was at the test centre a couple of weeks ago. There were 5 tests going out, but 2 examiners never even came out of the office because clearly their tests had been cancelled. It just seems if that's going on in all the test centres we've got at that rate, that's a huge number of wasted slots. And it just makes me think, you know, could something be done about those?
Yeah, I think, when you look at things like the Ready to Pass campaign, clearly that was an example of DVSA comms actually being very proactive for once about getting people, getting the message across about being properly prepared for tests. I think they could do with channeling some of that same, kind of enthusiasm and ability into messaging that target the real issues that we're seeing at this moment in time, which is failures to appear. And the time that costs people, tackling the apps, not just with the companies that are using these apps and doing these booking services, but actually targeting at the public, why you shouldn't be using them. Because we get asked by the media what our thoughts are on these issues, and we're talking about it, but we should see the agency being more proactive in telling people, about their behaviour and how that harms everyone else's chances to get a test.
See, one of the items there, Carly, is that because people are concerned they can't get a test, they book one immediately. So there are all these people sitting there. There must be thousands and thousands of these that do not actually need that test at that time, which is what DVSA have said about customer behaviour changing. One meeting we went to, I had thought that they were going to try and do a campaign to try and change perceptions, but we've not seen anything on that yet. I mean, we have our next meeting in early December, don't we? So we could, let's make a list of what we can bring up when we talk after this meeting. But that's certainly one of the things. What's happening about this customer behaviour? It needs changing.
Yeah, you need to send that actually quite tough and direct messages to people about the using of the apps, paying more for testing you should do using a fraudulent third-party booking site. I think one of the problems that we have, Lynn, is whilst we ask DVSA what they're going to do about, providing a deterrent to pupil behaviour on the negative side, they never seem to have any answers on that. And you can see that obviously I get quite frustrated because I think they could. I think, some appalling pupil behaviours, you could look at extreme measures like you're banned from applying for a test for a year. If you're found to use an impersonator to take your tests, or, be abusive to an examiner, or you have several fail to appear to test slots you've booked in a row, maybe you need to start blocking people out of the system for that behaviour. And it's a step they just don't seem to want to take. And that concerns me, because we should be putting some deterrents in place, at least, if not actually penalising people, at least in having the threat of a deterrent for poor customer behaviour.
Yeah, and we get plenty of people asking for driving lessons who are nowhere in your area because they've done it through the bot system. And because of that, those particular tests get moved around and changed almost on an hourly basis. And by the time the examiner's booked, but then there's no payment because that bot's moved on, that's been moved on so late that you can't pick it up.
Yeah.
So by using these third parties, you're undermining your own business by doing that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I think we'll come back to this issue of the test numbers, but that was just in your questions, because I can see there's questions about that already. But in terms of us just doing a quick update, and then we'll move to opening up your questions properly. Lynn, you've had some questions in already, and I know people have expressed concerns to you because you're an on-the-ground trainer of ADIs. Did you want to pick up about some points?
Yeah.
What test recovery strategy, its impacts on Part 3 audit and standards checks?
Yeah, because obviously they've taken some of the more senior people out who would normally be doing these Part 2, 3 tests to work on other testing. One examiner I was talking to only a week ago said that in January and February, instead of working his normal working days, he would only be working 2, because the rest of them he was going back to learners. So actually, my question is, well, surely that's going to impact the Part 2 and 3s, you know, and he did raise his eyebrows at that, because obviously it will if they're not doing as many tests for those. So during this time, what we've been told is that Part 2 and 3 tests will still go ahead. And obviously the reason for that is because people only have this 2 years to qualify from when they pass their Part 1. And although that seems a long time, we're finding out, as I'm sure your associations are, from members that they're running out of time. So a PDI I had recently had 2 cancelled tests by the DVSA. Now that led to 5 months virtually passing. So this is a long time. When you're talking 2 years, it can soon disappear, or, you know, they're waiting for trainee licenses decisions and that sort of thing. So Part 2s and 3s are still going ahead. However, standards checks are vastly reduced. We're not saying there aren't any, because I know there are some. So if people are hitting what we used to call the tips, now called the parameters, if people are hitting those, then you will find possibly that you do get a standards check. Or if when this all started, you were on a 3rd or possibly a 2nd standards check, then those will still be going ahead, because you will be deemed to be people that need to have those. So it's not that there's none at all. It's just that they are looking at people who hit those figures and taking those in. So there are some still going on, but not obviously anywhere near as many until at least March next time. So anybody, for example, that is new to the industry and just qualified, you know, they're not going to be getting one just because they're newly qualified. And some people who had dates, those will have been cancelled, and watch out for any cancellations of standards checks, because I know of some that have been. As for audit, any audit assessments that were currently booked up to this time when they started to take the extra testing will be rebooked for after the 31st of March. And if anybody wants one, they can have a refund, because after all, I know people who months ago paid their money, and you're talking £151 here. So what they've said is that they will refund that and take that later. If somebody at this time of year is needing their £151, ask them for it back, you'll get it back later. We're not accepting any new, this is the DVSA, any new applicants into the system. So I should have had an audit check coming up sometime next year. I would have normally applied by now. I've been told not to even apply and not to send any money. So if you're looking at audit, there's nothing at the moment going on, and we can only hope that it starts up again from April onwards, although even then it's going to be squeezed with everything else. So that's really the updates on those. If you'd like me to, some of the questions that came in were about that, and I've just seen something that's popped up. I can see it on the chat and I don't disagree at all, but something that came up saying that the standards check is old-fashioned. Well, yeah, I mean, this is what we said. We were at a workshop recently in October which was discussing the qualification process, which involved the standards check and how we can make things different. But I do say sometimes we have to be careful what we wish for and ask for. Because remember, people were saying that they didn't just think it was fair to be marked on a standards check, and actually they should look at their test performance as well. And what did we get? We got the parameters. So sometimes, folks, be careful what we ask for.
What you wish for. I mean, moving slightly on to back to the audit question. One of the things as Lynn mentioned, we asked for a workshop to explore the topic of developing the ADI qualification, because I don't think anybody really on this webinar would disagree with the fact that it isn't necessarily fit for purpose anymore for the world of modern driver education and running a driver education business. So we're fortunate to be able to slip this workshop in before they all went off the radar. And it's unfortunate that whilst we had a brilliant discussion in some respects, nothing can be done about some of those ideas until they're back at work, in their normal jobs. But it is worrying that we're not able to do stuff with audit trainers and look at their standards and bring more people onto the register, when at the same time DVSA are saying in this workshop, one of our biggest concerns is we've actually had increasing demand for training licenses. So we're experiencing exponential demand for people to become driving instructors. And what we're concerned about as an agency is the quality of training those people are going to receive. And so it's a bit of a kind of, it's talking out of both sides of your mouth there. You're concerned about what new trainees will have confronting them in terms of training standards coming into the industry, and you're still accepting their applications, but you're not keeping an eye really on those who are going to be training those people and doing anything about, let's face it, acknowledging the problems. We're acknowledging that the ADI qualification isn't necessarily fit for purpose anymore, and not all the trainers training ADIs are of the standard that we really need to create the trainers of tomorrow. So, this is a frustration that we've got with this current situation, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Shall I go over a few questions? Well,
yes, please do. Yeah,
I'm in on that. If you want to be looking at the other Q&A that's coming, because it's quite hard to be talking and looking at the questions, isn't it?
Yeah.
So one question that came in is, have the DVSA identified any benefits relating to ADI teaching standards since the introduction of the parameters? So let me explain. I think the one benefit that we've got, and I don't think there's no specific survey or anything that's been done, but they are looking at these all the time. And I think what they have done is managed to reach the very poorest of the ADIs. And unfortunately, there are some out there, because we were shown some statistics at meetings which showed how many tests failures certain ADIs have had. And to be honest, it was virtually 98% fail. Now, these are the sorts of people, I think the parameters were setting correctly at the beginning, but these are the sort of people that it will be catching. And those are the sort of people that will still be getting a standards check. So hopefully it will be doing something and be beneficial. It was put there to prioritize standards checks. The reason it was there was to raise standards, but to prioritize who was going to get a standards check. So you could say from that point of view, it has actually done that. However, I think as NASP, we all agreed that the timing of it was not good, because it was done during and just straight after COVID. Now, as ADIs, we know that we've got a terrible time at the moment. If somebody is just about ready for a test and then you're going to suggest they need more lessons or you want to cancel it, then they've got another possibly 5 months or more to wait before they can do another one. So we are under terrific strain. So I think the timing of when they put these parameters out was wrong. And I don't think that they looked quickly enough at when to change these. We've had one change to it. Do you remember we had 2 of the parameters, the number of faults was one of them, which actually was brought in a few months back. And that did start to bring down from about 10,000 ADIs that were on their, lookout lists that were hitting these to under 4,000, I think it was. So that had a big difference. And I think we've got to make sure as NASP that we keep going back and saying, are you going to alter these again? Do they need altering again? Yeah. But I do think the timing was pretty dreadful.
And we actually asked at the time that this be made a pilot, not that the scores on the doors wouldn't count, but that there would be a consideration that this was a new process and it needed a period of bedding in, and to not judge people too harshly, because you were trying to encourage a behavior, not make it a massive punishment for people. So that didn't happen. Our lobbying for it to be a pilot didn't happen. We were promised a review within a year's period. The survey that you're referring to, Lynn, I believe the only surveying they kind of did really was a question like, have you found the engagement call useful? And if you ask us as human beings questions like that in official polls, we're tremendously compliant. We'll give you the answer that we think you want to have. And they didn't really do more to try and get past that compliance barrier. So obviously the result was positive. People said, yes, I found it was useful. There was no real depth to that survey to understand whether this was an impactful thing. So I think we still need to push them on, are we seeing a benefit that outweighs the pain and the effort to put this system in place?
Yeah, definitely. I think people need to understand how long it does take for DVSA to be able to change things. Sometimes things are set in legislation. Somebody's just put up, I've just seen pop up, why is it such an old-fashioned test, the standards check and the part 3? I remember it came in 2014 and it was changed completely from the way that, say, myself or Mike did that test. But definitely this is why we're looking at it again. But there's just so much that goes on at DVSA and so much that we spend time waiting for. So the reason it's not been changed is it's not down to us, believe me. It's down to the DVSA and also to government with what they are telling DVSA to do.
However, we have kind of got sick of that excuse to a certain extent, because it often is an excuse that we can't make these changes because they're enshrined in legislation. It's hard to change legislation. Actually, I think what emerged from the AGI qualification workshop was, excuse my language, but a certain degree of BS around that point, in that when we broke down things like the, okay, so you can't change the fact that we've got to do a part 1, 2, and 3, but can you change the contents of part 1, 2, and 3 to some respect so they better reflect what a person's supposed to be doing and are better aligned with the standards? And that's when the conversation became interesting, because then there was some, kind of softening on their part that, oh, actually, yes, I do get your point that, for example, the part 2 is more about someone's driving ability than it is about their driving instruction ability. And that can't be right, because it's a test of teaching competency. It's not supposed to be about your driving competency. So, and there was things in the part 1 that seem to have been not changed for many years, and legislation using an excuse. But if you just poke them a bit harder, they kind of run out of excuses there. And I think that's our job, is to keep saying, I think you can make changes within the framework you've got and not have to go to a legislative, process to do that.
I also think that the new registrar and deputy working to see change in things,
Yes.
And everything, that it wasn't a waste of time, our meeting, because everything has been written down and minuted and noted. So it's all still there for when it's picked up again.
Yeah.
Shall I move on to the next question?
Please.
Why do the DVSA no longer want to see coaching to help pupils overcome issues relating to the higher levels of the GDE matrix on a part 3 or standards check? The issues on the higher level are the reasons why people crash. But on talking to an examiner recently, and this is the person asking the question speaking, he said he didn't think ADIs would be doing this on a part 3 or standards check. So can I just say that in the national standards, and of course in the examiner's guidelines, everything in there is about being client-centered and coaching. And the DVSA's wording is actually that coaching is one method of learning. It's not the only one. We might need to bring instruction in at times. So there are different methods here that can be used. But what I would say about the GDE matrix is that I think, don't just look at it at the part 3 or standards check. I know they want to see it, and I'm sure the examiners are coach themselves in doing this, because when I did my last audit inspection, the examiner at the end said it was lovely to see the higher levels of the GDE matrix being brought in there, Lynn. So yes, of course they want to see it, but you've only got 45 minutes now to take this test. So you might be mentioning it somewhere near the beginning when you pick your pupil up from the house, if it's relevant. If it's relevant, get it in there. But if you look at the higher levels, it's about not just obviously the car control, but more about the peer pressure and the groups
driver psychology, driver behavior. Yeah.
So I I just think that what that examiner meant was that in the 45 minutes you've got, it's unlikely you're going to get something like that into there. But actually, we all get it in there all the time, because the final level and point about this is the self-reflection.
Yeah.
So if it's the self-reflection, yes, that is getting in there. So I think this has come because people have been writing in and saying to me that there's a lot of fault spotting, analysis and correction always mentioned at the end of part 3 in standards check. Why is this? Why are we coming away from coaching? But you've got to think about the questions at the end that are actually asked, because anything to do with feedback will be done in a coaching style. It's about, were you aware of the surroundings? So that means, have you missed your faults with the pupil's actions? So it is still in there. But I can see why the examiner answered in that way. You know,
don't you think there's a frustration there as well, because the test is on a fault basis, so therefore you're going to get picked up on whether you've picked up faults. So
that's
that
an excellent point. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
two work together, don't they?
Yeah.
So until the test, which I'm sure it will, changes to cover more bends, roundabouts, getting ourselves onto country roads, maybe extending the sat-nav period, or maybe using road signs for one half and sat-nav for the second, so that it widens that experience. And I think that will then, if that can be reflected in our part 1s, 2 and 3. In fact, it was asked me the other day, why don't we do part 2 first and then do part 1? So if the person can't drive, why are they going through the other part of the process? Maybe the order of it is maybe wrong, and that wouldn't change legislation. Surely that's just, this is the order in which you do it, a starting point at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, these were things that came up at the workshop, weren't they, Carly, that were
Yeah.
all noted. So I think there will be changes coming, and I know they want to change these. However, it's not going to happen anytime soon, folks. It really isn't, because it can't at the moment, because of these awful test waiting times, which are really holding the whole industry back right now, as far as I'm concerned.
But going back to the point about standards check, GDE,
yeah.
I think if more people were taking full license holders and they were specific about what I'm actually teaching this person is about the fact that they are an occupational driver who suffers from great work pressures and fatigue, and we're looking at that upper level of what are the external influences on someone's driver behavior, but that's not everybody's pupil that they can take. But the other thing is, you know, don't be discouraged to focus on coaching, because your ultimate standard is creating a safe, independent driver, or a safe, developed driver who already has a license. It's not this 45-minute test every 4 years. And I think those of you here tonight are at the top of your game, professionals who are engaging in CPD. I'm teaching you guys to suck eggs here, but we do have this coterie of people who the only thing they really worry about as a risk or use the judgment of their ultimate, you know, competency is the standards check. And I know it's really, really important, but what's more important is the quality of your pupils when they leave you. And, you know, where you're getting them through to that standard post-test safe drivers is where you have worried about them as a driver in terms of their behavior and psychology, not how they've maneuvered that car. So coaching and getting them to those upper levels should still be your ultimate goals, regardless of the agency not being as up to speed with what we should be doing in driver education as you guys are.
And of course, in 45 minutes, you cannot get everything in. I think sometimes, you know, we cover so much for part 3 when we do our learning, if we're doing it well, that it almost feels like everything's got to be put into that 45 minutes. And of course, it can't be. So the point of a good teacher is to bring out the bits that are relevant at that point in time for that pupil and their ability. So you may not be able to get the higher levels in, but obviously in your teaching the rest of the time, there is no reason why that can't be. And if it was relevant on a part 3 or standards check, then add it. And I agree, it could be with a full license holder. Not that I'm saying that I think that would be your best choice to take,
no,
but
there are ways that you can look at the GDE and demonstrate pupils within that. But you know, let what you want your pupils to be as a reflection of you and how they drive when they've left you be your ultimate goal. And I think you'll say, absolutely, I should be using coaching and be worried about those upper levels more.
Definitely. Final question I had in on this was, why can't trainee licenses be extended for valid reasons like lack of test availability. I think this has probably come about because I'm hearing, as I'm sure other trainers are, that second trainee licenses are now sometimes being refused, whereas during and just after COVID, people were having second licenses very easily and third licenses. But that is being really scaled back. So I think that's probably where that comes from. I think that's set in legislation, and I don't think that can be changed. It's 6 months, isn't it? What they can do, of course, it's their 2 years, which is the worry for people towards the end. And of course, as long as they've actually booked their final test within the 2-year period, they can take it outside the 2-year period. So there is that leeway, but I don't think there is any other. But I do think, Carly, that is one thing that needs to come up at our next meeting, because this 2 years is starting with everything the way it is to just be unacceptable, because it's taking some people that long to get through it. And it's not their fault.
It's not their fault. And again, that the standards check, goals, if you were to design the process of qualifying and developing the performance of a professional, and a set of professions, again, you would not do it this way at all, because it's not consistent with other professions, how they're monitored, how they're qualified. So this is why we keep trying to lobby for some change here. And I think whilst there might be a reluctance to change, or a psychology that says it's too much hard work and it's legislation, we can't change it, I think we have to use our connections to go higher than DVSA and say, look, legislation can be changed overnight if there's a will with a certain minister and a certain government. So why do we actually, use that will and make some change? So I think, we're done with the excuses to a certain degree. It's impacting so many things now, the process, the qualification itself, the quality, that it's almost the time for excuses has run out, really. So as soon as they're able to talk about the subject again more seriously, it's going to be, we've given you loads of ideas, we've given you loads of suggestions, what are you going to do? And maybe one of those things that they need to look at doing is, they're not the appropriate body to run the training process and the monitoring process anymore. Maybe they should really just restrict themselves to the one task that they're really struggling with at the moment, which is providing driving tests to pupils, and not necessarily the professional qualification side. Who knows?
I think sometimes, Carly, our job as well is to, and we do this, to help the DVSA understand how ADIs see them, how stressed out the ADIs are. And we do that at all the meetings. I mean, I've noticed somebody's put up DVSA bully. Somebody else has put that we have to put up with non-standard examiners. Actually, at the DVSA meetings, they are aware that some of their examiners are not all standard and doing the same practices. And it's something that I think they're trying to work on. But I agree, they are not all standard. We know that in some areas they're doing one thing, and then in another area of the country, they may be doing something else. And I can see people's frustration. There's a question here about pushing DVSA to make Pass Plus a must. But do we feel that the things in Pass Plus now, like motorway driving, which was one of the sections in it, it's gone by now, hasn't it? Because they can go on the motorway even before they reach a test standard. So I don't know, we haven't discussed Pass Plus. I don't know whether we want to at a meeting and bring that up again. I've put it on the list.
I think on terms of, we're going to go to all the questions that you've been sending so far in a second, but I'm just picking up on that point. On Pass Plus, the government really wants to wait until the results of trials like the ones that DIA are undertaking at the moment. We've got a project called Milestones, which is part funded by DIA, part funded by Department for Transport, where we're going to look at a modular process of learning to drive. We're going to put it under a controlled trial, that if you make somebody essentially do more study with an ADI in car, and it's a modular approach, they have to complete a module before they move on to the next. It's a bit like the private pilot's license, where you have to complete each module in turn. You can't just run to the test center once you've got your provisional license and have no training in between. And they also do e-learning, so each group will do a different type of learning. Does that have an impact on driver safety outcomes for new drivers? And it would form the basis of, they don't want us to talk about it because they think it gets confused with graduated licensing, but it would form a graduated learning process, that rather than the process we've got at the moment, people would be to some degree not slowed down, but asked to jump through more hoops than they do already. And if that was the case, you would have a pre-test modular program, and then you would have a couple of modules post-test as well, and that would probably replace, in the thinking of government at this moment, any form of Pass Plus, and those could be mandatory. So you would possibly do these mandatory modules as you learn to drive. You have to pass those competencies, then you have the final competency test pre-licensure, which would be your driving test. And then you would be mandated to do one post-test module. So maybe similar to Pass Plus, maybe different, but it wouldn't hinge on, you know, an insurance company offering you a discount to do it. You would either have to do it, or it would be a blanket approach by the insurance industry that, you know, you wouldn't get your premiums reduced until you'd actually done this module. So that's possibly why it's gone very quiet on Pass Plus, because they're weighing up this kind of graduated learning process and mandating different things instead.
Carly, can I just ask a question on that, if I may? If you were going that route, and we go to the digital driving license, and we've got the 2-year period or probationary period, but it's evident when you've got a digital license because it will be in a different color, let's say, would the benefit of doing that or Pass Plus shorten that 2-year period because you've done the extra learning? Would that be an advantage, which might be an advantage to the insurance company, by halving that 2 years to 1 year, for example?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we're looking at in this trial is, does it have an impact to make people learn more, both online and with their instructor, and also learn in a consistent way? It's also about setting a curriculum to a certain degree. So you have this consistency of all pupils having to do one program of study for each module. It doesn't restrict the ADI to what and how they teach. It's just about, there's going to be a set of modules that people have to follow and prove competency in before they can move to the next one. But that in the trial as well, we're also looking at, to make this an in real life thing, what incentives would you have to put in? If you couldn't mandate it, what would you do to incentivize it? And the discussion has been also with the insurance industry about what would you give to people if they were somebody who came off this program. Would they get half price premiums versus somebody who just decided to do what they wanted to do as normal? But that's a good point that you've made, that could be another thing that, you know, is an attractive thing to make people want to engage in that kind of program. Yeah,
got some more questions here, and I'm sorry to hear of someone whose account was suspended by booking account was suspended by DVSA because he was told, or she was told, there was a duplicate account. They say there wasn't. Please do write back to ADI and JC. I'm the president now. I don't see everything that comes in every day, but you know, if you write to any of our organisations, we would try to help you. But you've put this in anonymously, so you will need to email to us, and we would need details, but happy to help with that. Somebody, and I've heard this before, Carly, can't the DVSA make their own app for bookings? You know,
if I thought they were a digitally proficient organization who were even able to make their existing booking engine work, Lynn, I would say of course they can make that app, because making apps is very easy. It's actually what goes on behind the app that is the you know, and what it actually does that is the important thing. They talked, when Loveday Rider came into position, of having a capital expenditure bid in with wider government to get more money, basically, for the agency to spend on its booking system. And that is one of the questions we should maybe be asking, you know, in December, is whatever happened to that CapEx bid that you talked about in your, you know, maiden speeches as a CEO, that was all going to be about building a new booking system, because the one they've got at the moment keeps falling over and isn't fit for purpose anymore. So I think we do need to chase them up on that, because until they have the right structure behind the app's just going to be something that could actually potentially create more instant bookings by being something that's more available to young people and they're going to use, into a system that itself is broken.
Yeah. Here's one I can't answer. And I've always said, if you can't answer your question, then you go away and you try and find out. But we're being asked directly, how many people are waiting for driving tests? Is it now starting to go down? And I don't really think the figures that we've been shown today from DVSA are answering that question. So maybe, Carly, we need to put that to them again now and just sort of say, is it coming?
We had a bit of a preamble conversation, didn't we? And as I said, I'm an ex-PR and I'm used to spinning figures, and that last two sentences are spinning, trying to spin a positive, but not saying anything about the reality of the status quo, which is, have your numbers really gone down since you've returned these people to the front line? The other question I've got for DVSA is, if they do have an impact, the next time we meet, they tell us a good news story. It kind of bugs me in a way. If this was the answer, why didn't you take this step sooner? Because, looking at those glum faces around the table when we went to see them in October, because half of them were going off to put their fluorescent tabards on and pick up their iPads straight after that meeting, they would have been through the pain of going back to the front line by now. So it kind of, it makes me think, if you'd have done this, and I think I'd have been sat in that chair thinking, we need to get on top of the situation now, I would have sent people out earlier. It seemed to take a very long time to come to the conclusion that we need to throw every available resource at this. Now, if you imagine this was a house on fire and it was burning, this would be the equivalent of only working out, almost 2 years later, that you needed to get more water on this fire or more fire units. So I do think it'll be interesting to see, has it as a tangible benefit? Have we seen the numbers really come down? And if not, what else are you going to do? Because are you at the end of your solutions now? If you've thrown all your people at it and everything else, what else have you got in your arsenal, DVSA?
It may be that it's just a little bit too early. We've only been in this sort of a month. There'll be new tests that were meant to come out on block on, I think it was November the 13th. I think probably more than a month before we'll know. But we should start to know if numbers are coming down. For sure, yeah. It's what we need to know there.
I mean, the cynic in me would say, if they were drastically coming down quickly, we would know because they'd have PR'd it. So does that in a way answer our questions? But that's me being highly cynical, and not everybody is as kind of pessimistic as I am. Shall we go through the questions? I mean, we're starting.
We've actually done a lot of them, to be fair. I've had the ones that came in before, and I'm trying to answer the ones that I'm looking down on. I think, going back to what you were saying, Colin, I totally agree. The DVSA were coming up with reasons for why it was happening, but they weren't coming up with solutions. And this is the first real sort of tangible solution that might start to bring it down more, maybe. Yeah.
And again, why was it not done sooner? Because once the fire starts, it doesn't necessarily dissipate just because you leave it or try other things. If the ultimate solution wasn't applied, it just gets bigger and bigger and spreads and spreads and spreads. So now they're having to deploy more people to deal with a bigger problem. If you'd have deployed more people in the beginning, would they've got on top of things, and we'd all be through the pain by now. So that's always at the back of mind. A good suggestion here, slightly off the topic of driving tests, but on the topic of theory tests, from Fiona, that she recently discussed with DVSA opening up the theory test centres for SEN candidates to visit the prior to test day, because obviously they need to get comfortable with, particularly people with neurodiversity challenges, with the environment of going to test and getting on top of that strange environment to them of going into a test scenario. She says she wasn't met with much enthusiasm, and can we put this query forward as NASP? So, if not possible, a written copy of what to expect on the day. Fiona, I would completely agree with that. Dealing as I do with tribunal representation and representing members under investigation, I've always been, my mind has boggled that it took them so long to have a, they don't even do a what to expect on the day now with these kind of things, but to advise people how they should prepare for these things. And I think that should be across the board. There should be lots of information in what to expect when you're going through a nerve-wracking procedure that you've never gone through before. And in the medical world, we see that done so much better. There's lots of information out there about what to expect from your procedure. There's lots of briefings, all those kind of things. So that is something definitely that we will put forward to DVSA.
If I can interrupt, we've already put that in to them, and they were looking at the possibility of putting a video together so that you could see If you're a
That's right.
person
The
who's
SEN
not
group.
remember not comfortable about being in a room on their own, having the almost like feeling like they're being searched because they've got a box to put their things in, and they needed to have that experience. We did ask if it was possible if people could have open days, just a couple of open days every now and then throughout the country. I think there was a cost issue involved in that rather than desire not to do it, but the possibility of putting a video together, as I understand it, is not on the back burner. It's still on the way there, but because we're not going to do anything till April, May, it's kind of in hold, but it's not been forgotten. In fairness, we have already put that forward.
I mean, there is an SEN working group, Fiona, and that was one of the things, as Mike Reitler remembers, that they talked about is supporting people through that process better. However, it's not just the post-COVID recovery challenges that have made that thing not appear. We do still need to dog them, that there are some things that they will use the current test waiting challenges to make it as an excuse for not doing, but actually could be done, or are just sat there and they just need to be got out of the factory, as it were, and out, out to the audience. So I think that's another thing we'll note to follow up on in our next meeting. There's a couple of questions in here about the already made decision about the removal of a test for B+E and the potential chat that there could be in the future the removal of requirements for D1 and C1 testing or separate licensing as well. I mean, look, in answer to those people, obviously we were part of the focus on B+E test being removed, as in lobbying against it, but then being asked to come up with a framework for training accreditation with the safe towing scheme. I think if they don't get these tests cracked down on in the Cat B area, you're always going to get the minister coming along and saying, well, what area of your provision can we get rid of next? And B+E was absolutely that. B+E was absolutely what kind of thing is not as important as the rest of them that we can get rid of so you can focus on testing. And still, those of us in that world of B+E training are still saying to DVSA, did it work? Because one of your reasons for ridding ourselves of B+E testing and causing this safety risk of letting people take to the roads towing without the barrier of a test was to free up more capacity for HGV drivers. And we managed to combat that change actually coming into law several times. I think Grant Shots got very frustrated with us because we were saying you can't present any figures that say there is a benefit to us from the HGV side, because actually we're seeing HGV test slots being advertised as being free on a weekly basis. So where is this demand for HGV tests that you can't supply currently, that you have to free up another 35,000 odd slots from B+E? And has it had that impact? Are you able to do more for the HGV industry or Cat B because you don't have to do this test capacity here? And also, have we had a safety detriment? Are we seeing more towing incidents? Because if you don't have the deterrent, or as it were, or the barrier of a test, people will not bother training with a professional trainer. They will just take to the road, towing. Or if they do remove the C1 and D1 license requirements, they'll just do the same. They'll leap in any of the vehicles. So we're anxious to get to the bottom of, has the B+E test removal had an impact where it should have done, or has it had a very detrimental effect? And government, don't do anything until you've reviewed that on C1 and D1, because you could make another potentially catastrophic move in terms of road safety, just to free up some more test slots, which fundamentally might not get used. So I think we still got a real challenge there with ministers from the outside, and we've got a new one for roads this week after the cabinet reshuffle, coming in and going, well, what's the problem then? What's the problem then? I'm here to solve all this for you. Well, where can you stop doing something, DVSA? What can you lose so you can focus all resources here? And you might have a bigger loss by creating a safety issue by trying to free up capacity for Cat B, by saying in other categories we're not quite so bothered about being as rigorous with testing and gatekeeping there.
I have to say, Carly, in the time we've been in NASP, we've had certainly a lot of changes of minister. I mean, we've got Mark Harper at the moment, Secretary of State for Transport, and the new person who's the Under Secretary of State, which is Guy Opperman, isn't it?
Yeah, so he came in this week. Richard Holden, who was gone in the blink of an eye, has gone off to the Cabinet Office to work. Well, so has gone up to Party HQ to be party chair, and we now have Mr. Opperman, who is ex-barrister before an MP, ex-amateur jockey, and really spent a lot of his time at the Ministry of Justice. So he's actually quite new to a transport brief. So he is going to be now the minister responsible for DVSA, DVLA, and other associated licensing and roads agencies, as well as the road safety strategy. So we'll be interested to try and meet with him as soon as possible, as maybe a fresh pair of eyes who's still listening, hopefully, and looking at his brief, and highlighting some of the problems and challenges we've got as an industry, before the agencies that are responsible for these problems can get to him and tell him all the things that they can't do or won't do. Shall we rephrase it as that, or don't want to do?
Yeah. One other thing I also noticed today was that tonight between 6 and midnight, you can only book and manage theory tests. You won't be able to do anything else with bookings. That was planned maintenance, apparently.
And you're popping over to a question there about cracking down on the booking app companies. You know, every time we raise this at Meet DVSA, they give us all the reassurances in the world that they're trying their best to be on this. They're doing certain things. They're employing higher levels of security and firewalls for their booking engine. But it is a frail and vulnerable old beast, that booking engine. And the thing is, the booking app companies will be running a range of bot companies trying to get into a range of booking systems or systems to give people an advantage for which they can charge a large amount of cash. They are always going to be one step ahead of the DVSA because their IT network just ain't that good. So again, that goes back to, you know, are you going to make any leaps forward with building a new booking system that won't necessarily be, you know, absolutely robust to any kind of cyber attacks or bots going in there and being able to do that? But until then, they can give us their reassurances they're on top of it. But unfortunately, those who wish to make money from it are often, you know, one step ahead. It's a truism that the most sophisticated technology companies in the world and the highest powered servers for online systems in the world actually belong to criminals or to the porn industry, for example. So those on the bad side have often got access to better, brighter people and better tools than those on the official government side as well. So I think the biggest thing that DVSA could do is more awareness. Goes back to that thing we just said, more public awareness campaigns, you know, and talk of deterrence, and talk of penalties if you're seen to use these booking systems. You might not get back into the booking system again if we can identify your booking has come in through a third party. So you won't only have the penalty of cash, as in you've spent too much to get the test that somebody else next door to you has paid the right rate for. You might actually be penalized that they can. One of the questions I asked was, can you identify that a test has come in from this booking engine? They're very clever. They can change the IP address and all these kind of things. But if they were sophisticated enough, could they identify where that people's booking had come in from? Had it come from these booking apps? And could that people be told, you can't go into the system, or you won't be granted a test in your name for the next 6 months because you've used one of these apps? So I think, you know, we need to go back and push them about where's the awareness campaigns. Because the other thing that's on the rise as well, I had a journalist contact me from the Sun yesterday. They'd done an FOI request, or Freedom of Information Request Act, on impersonations at driving tests. And apparently those numbers have gone up slightly as well. So people paying somebody to go and impersonate them on a theory test or a driving test. The argument is people are desperate, they'll pay more, they'll risk more to do this. But the problem is the person who takes that risky approach to pay somebody to do something that they know is wrong, they know an impersonation, they might not know the booking apps are wrong because there's not enough awareness about the fact that these are not legitimate platforms, but they should know that paying someone else to take their test is wrong. And if that person shows that risky behavior in making that bad choice there, they're probably likely to be a risky driver as well, because, you know, they'll have that risk profile that's willing to commit a known fraud and pay somebody to be them at a test. And they're also admitting by doing that, they're not competent and ready to pass a test. They're probably going to be amongst some of the riskiest drivers that could be licensed if we don't crack down on that side of things as well. So
there's
yeah.
one question here, Carly, which I'm not sure I quite understand. It says, is the content of drivers training agreed by all? I'm not sure whether you mean in the national standards and the car driving syllabus. Do we all agree it? It's set by DVSA, and the national standards and the driver syllabus are there. So that's where you would find the training. I'm not quite sure what the person means by the question, or whether do we agree on the training that's set. It's a bit of an ambiguous question.
If you as you post that question, do you want to maybe just quantify for us what you meant by that question, then we can answer it properly for you? Otherwise, we're kind of just doing a little finger in the wind exercise. We might not be answering your question properly. Interesting question here. Thanks for running this webinar. Who does NASP believe leads this industry? We know that DVSA regulates it, but who is driving things forward in a way which will improve road safety? Who's encouraged ADIs to lift their heads a little and aim higher than driving test passes? Well, I'd like to think we play our part in this. We wouldn't be arrogant enough to say we are doing that job brilliantly. But if you think about projects like Milestones, that has come from this industry. That is thought that was accumulated over the past, so many years, so many conversations with ADIs and road safety bodies about, is there a better way of training people to achieve that first license and then developing their skills afterwards? And the fact that we now have, we didn't go to DVSA with that as an idea. I went straight to government and made a business case for it, because you have to think Dragon's Den, like it has to have a positive impact for government in terms of, could it save them some money in the future? Could it be make a process more efficient? So we put all of that into a business case, really, and we were fortunate enough to have it as a funded project. So I think in that sense we are leading, because this will be the first trial of its kind in the world to put this modular approach to test in a controlled testing environment, and more on that shortly when we actually launch the trial. So I'd like to think, we do lead in some areas, and, encouraging government to revisit and rebuild from ground zero the ADI qualification is something we're very passionate about doing, whereas other countries have, followed what the UK did and won't follow any more than that. Really, they'll leave it be. Whereas there's standout countries like Finland who have a much more robust, and Sweden much more robust process for both trainer qualification and driver qualification. But we try our best. And we do have other routes than just going through DVSA. DIA, we sit on the Road Safety Delivery Group, which is the policy advisory group that you have organisations like the police, the fire service, or what do you call them? Devolved administrations like Northern Ireland and Wales sit on. It's the minister's team. That gives us the opportunity to speak directly into that team that is shaping policy above DVLA and DVSA's head. So, we do our best to get into the ears of those who could change policy, strategy and legislation. We don't just go and speak to DVSA and expect them to do something, because if you've probably heard from some of the tone of our conversation tonight, they don't sometimes want to do things, or they'll come up with excuses for things, or maybe they feel that they aren't in a position to make change themselves. So we have to go and speak to the change makers above them.
One that made me smile here, Carly. It says anonymously, is Lovejoy Rider, RIDER, actually out taking tests? Or can we just say that the CEO at the DVSA is called Loveday Rider, RYDER? And no, of course she isn't, because she isn't a warrant holder, so she wouldn't know how to go out and take a driving test. She can't. She's not one of the ones that can go out, is she? No. That one did just make me smile.
Come on, Mike, did you want to?
Well, there was somebody earlier on asked about minibuses that are 3.5. It actually put the wrong weight in the question, but minibus light that are 3.5 ton that you can drive on a B license. What was our thoughts on people being able to do that? And to be able to do that and receive money, you would have to have a small minibus permit, so a permit 19, but it was designed around the education basis, so that otherwise every school teacher would have to spend $3,000 each to go and get a minibus license to take people around from the school. So the permit 19 and the idea of the minibus light is probably a good option going forward, but it's still a minibus. It's a 15-seat minibus that you don't need to take a test for, because you can drive it on a B license. because it comes under 3.5 ton, and your license says you can drive anything under 3.5 ton. Although it says 8 passengers on your car license, the legislation will allow you, providing you've held your license for 2 years, you're age 21, you can drive a minibus light. So, and that fits in with a lot of insurance policies, and it certainly fits in with the sort of age of people that are in teaching. So that's the reason why it's there. Whether it's a good thing or not, certainly in my experience, all the schools in my area, certainly I get involved in giving everybody training, and they get a permit to be able to do that. And a lot of people go for the Midas training as well. So I don't think that many take up those sort of buses. It would be very difficult, if at all, you can hire one, purely because of the insurance implication. So most large hire companies will not have those on their fleet. They have the full size minibus. But if that kind of answers the question.
Thanks for your expertise there, Mike.
Thanks for that. Yeah,
I mean, mindful of the time here as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to take this one though, because I think it is interesting. From Alan, can publication of individual pass rates be reviewed for instructors? Pass rates matter. Are you talking, Alan, about the idea that as well as a tip being used, individual pass rates being attributed to an ADI and the DVSA being able to monitor performance based on those pass rates, that those individual pass rates of ADIs were actually published? So the public customer could make a judgment on an ADI, which was much more understandable than perhaps an A grade, is to someone who doesn't know what the qualification process is. Perhaps you could qualify that. But, what do we think about that idea of increasing the amount of data that's open to members of the public that they could use to make a decision about what instructor they used?
Well, this is something that came up at a meeting, and we did start to, everything shut down. And we were asking, even at one of our own association meetings, we were asking people what they would be comfortable with people knowing and what they wouldn't. And the vast majority of people, and I can fully understand why, didn't particularly want pass rates published. If we choose to tell somebody our pass rates, that's rather different than just having them published without us agreeing to do that. So, the problem with pass rates is what happens then to people who take a lot of perhaps special needs candidates, or people who just naturally take longer and will probably take more than one test. I mean, pass rates, I don't feel just being given out to the general public, personally anyway, I don't feel that that's a very good idea. I think if we want to show people our own pass rates, we can do that. We've got them on our piece of paper in our test data report if we want to show people. Yeah,
I think that's important. Okay, so I think we've got to the end of the majority of the questions in terms of topics, rather not repeating topics. There's an interesting one here, last one that I'll take before making a comment on some of the comments there from Gavin, that why are we not saying no to the tip system? We did actually ask DVSA several times to reconsider the introduction of tip, and I think you would be well aware of that, Gavin, as we made it public at the time what we're asking DVSA to do in terms of reconsidering it, making it a pilot, but it was presented as a fait accompli. And I think the reality is that they say that they would be able to demonstrate the benefits of that now, and it would be very hard to see that being overturned in terms of the view of the decision makers above their head. If DVSA are able to convince government it's a good thing and can provide evidence to that degree, then I think it's still going to remain in place. I think the industry would have to show a strong amount of evidence why it's a bad thing and why it's detrimental in terms of for the public good, not just for ADI's good, that would say that it should be overturned, because the agency's biggest focus is protecting the public, rather than necessarily protecting the ADI, who is a customer they should be bothered about because you pay them money and you are a customer, but their real focus is on protecting the public by upholding the standards. Is there any closing comments that you guys would like to make, Mike and Lynn?
Sorry,
I would just mention that it was our intervention, of course, that got them to move the parameters. Had we not put pressure on them, those parameters wouldn't have been changed when we were talking about the tip, etc. So it was entirely us really who drove that. It wasn't DVSA saying we want to do this. We forced them into it by conversation.
No, that's fine for me, Collie. I hope we've answered as many as we can possibly answer. It's not easy when you're talking about things to be looking at the questions at the same time. But I hope we've answered most things. And thank you for the people at the end who've started to thank us for being here. And, you know, it's an idea that we can do again, isn't it, at some point in time? I think, Carly, this recording is going out so people can watch it later if they weren't able to be here.
Yeah, just at a point there, just to refresh people's memories, for the anonymous user who says the lady with glasses is talking BS, but you didn't abbreviate it in the post there, that if that's me, then I apologize if you think I'm talking BS. Perhaps you'd like to not anonymously email me so we can have that conversation about what you think was wrong about what I said tonight. I do talk for England, as does many others on this panel, because when we go into that room with DVSA, we've got a very short amount of time to make our points known on behalf of our members. The other thing that I would say is, you know, those of us who can talk for England, you better hope that we're the people representing you at fit and proper proceedings for inappropriate conduct as professionals, because you really want us to talk in those sorts of proceedings. And, you know, just a caution that even in these kind of webinars, you know, we'd like to see professional conduct, and we'd like to see ADIs acting as professionals. I similarly had an email today saying that a guy wouldn't bother coming to this Q&A because we're so far up the DVSA's ARC that we can actually clean their teeth for them, which, you know, extended the invite again for him to come along and see whether we were so far up the DVSA's backside that we would only agree with them. I think you can see tonight, we don't just agree with the DVSA. And when we go in that room, we don't just sit there as little pawns listening to what they say and agreeing with them. We do entirely the opposite. But there is a limit to our powers. There's a limit to DVSA's powers. Collectively, we need to work for change, and we target those above DVSA to make change, and we do make some changes too, whether that's, you know, attributed to us or not. But as Lynn said in the chat, when we do these evenings and we give our time to them, I've got broad shoulders, but some people, you know, that's very offensive language. Please try and be as respectful as we've tried to be in this chat today. But as I said, I'm always happy to have a debate with anybody about the quality, content, and quantity of what I provide. So please feel free to come and chat to me about what you haven't enjoyed tonight. But otherwise, thank you, everybody.
Can I thank everybody? Can we thank everybody for attending, because the attendance was high for that at 6 o'clock at night, and people can listen again afterwards. Yes. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, everybody, for your time. I know it's precious at the moment. We really appreciate it. And some brilliant ideas, comments, and feedback that we can take back to our next meeting. So, yeah, hope to see you all soon. And again, thanks for your time and have a great evening.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.